What up, what up, what up, what up? It's your boy B Phil. Been gone for a while, but we back again. 115.24. So, we're gonna keep this real simple. We're gonna get back into this technical analysis here. Let's start with gold. Now let's just do a brief recap. We actually saw gold wick all the way up to all-time highs. Now, this is gold spot. This is not by the actual gram, where most people would probably buy it. This is actually by the ounce. But as we can see, we have a general uptrend on gold here. And that's on the daily. So let's continue to zoom out. And see a range. We see it wicking here. We see it kind of bouncing back here. But if we see some of our indications, it just seems like there's, of course, a lot of money in gold. We might be at a slight turnaround period. So what we could do is, if we wanted to be a bit more conservative, we will want to wait for gold to come down into this particular zone here. And of course, this zone is between $1,810.46 to $1,955.80. We could go ahead and look for it to pull back into that zone. This is going to be a more long-term perspective. We see here down on Market Cipher be a slight curve, although this could, of course, continue to go up. The candle closes in about 16 days, so we'll certainly see where it's going. But if we wanted to zoom in, we could go ahead and really refine this particular area. So we saw in this same area on the weekly that, of course, we did have price breakdown, and we had a large move up here. This large move up was on Monday, October 9th last year, which was 2023. And we could argue that we could go ahead and refine and wait for price to come back into that area, or we could even make it even smaller and wait for price to come into the zone of $1,810.46 to $1,848.99. And so we could say that, but we continue to see price move up after the fact, at which case it starts to move down here around October 30th of last year, and we see a large move down on November 6th, 2023. And then we see a break up, so we could be looking for a zone to trade in there. And it looks like price did break up, and that's where we saw that large wick up to all-time highs for the week of December 4th, 2023, at which the next week we saw price come back down into the zone, aforementioned zone. This is from $1,933.03 to $1,993.49. And then, of course, we see a breakdown, but we don't see any down candles. This is more so an up candle, slightly indecisive. And so what we'd want to see is we want to see price move back into that particular area before we look for a particular trade. Now, of course, that's on the weekly. We could go down even further, could say the daily time frame, and we can continue to look for zones that actually make sense. And lo and behold, we do see a zone that probably makes sense. We see our 200 RSI, we're pretty much in the green here, and so it would probably make sense for us to start looking for, again, if we're thinking that this is a continued uptrend. We see here on the day of December 11th, 2023, we see a large down candle. And we see some wick action on the day of December 13th, which wicks down, but then just has a large up move. And so what I would actually do, so I will go ahead and move my particular zone to this area here. And I will go ahead and wait for price to come into the zone from $1,973.09 to $2,007.85. And when we see price move down into there, that might be a better indication of maybe a pretty good day trade, if you will. Now, of course, if we're crackhead traders, what we could do is we continue to go down time frames and look for some short scalps that potentially are coming up in the next few days, as opposed to waiting very long for that particular move down. And again, if our assumption is on the long-term time frame, we're continuing to go up from here, we're still in a particular uptrend. Remember, on the monthly, we see that this could actually curl over. We have 16 days left until this particular price action is ultimately done. It looks like we're slightly starting to head to the upside. Then it would make sense that we probably want to continue to look for some up moves here in price action. So we see here more recently, January 11th, which was last Thursday at 7 a.m. We had a very large move down, and then we had some moves up, kind of slow, but then we had a large breakup. So we could go ahead and look for a zone in the near term, right? And this particular trade would be something that you're probably going to hold for a few hours max. Maybe you're not holding it for a few days. Maybe you're holding it for a nice little 1 to 3 here. So we look here, and of course we can go down and refine this even more, but maybe you're holding it, and then you have to ask yourself a question. We want to see it go to all-time highs. We want to see it break this previous wick, and that's a nice 1 to 5 there. So we could go ahead and look here, and of course the zone is at $2,013, $2,013.39 to $2,035.52. So we could go ahead and look at that for a potential trade entry. And then, of course, we can even go even further down and wait for price action to move in a particular way. So you see this large move down here. We have some wick action. So you could potentially refine it down to $2,013.39 to $2,029.69. Then you can go ahead and move your trade entry just a slight tad bit, which will give you a nice little 1 to 3. And that's not even reaching the all-time highs. And again, the assumption is we're going to go ahead and break these all-time highs. So if we're taking a trade from there, we're looking at a 1 to 7. And so these are my thoughts on gold. Let's just go ahead and look at one more. Let's go to the crypto. Crypto has been pretty hot topic lately. We see here right now it's at $42,205.25. It looks like we're starting to get some move back down after three months of moving up. So October, November, and December, we just had candles to the upside. Now we're looking like we want to start moving down and, as some might say, distributing, if we're looking at Wyckoff, or people starting to sell their positions at the beginning of the year to go ahead and reaccumulate somewhere down in this area. Now, if I'm looking at this, looking at the weekly chart, we had these large moves up. So we had some very wicky price actions starting from August 14th back in 2023. And then we finally had some large moves up here in October. So starting in October 16th to October 23, these are the weeks of, we had some break in these previous price points here. So what we go ahead and do is we can go ahead and look for a particular zone. Now we know Bitcoin is quite volatile, so there is a pretty high likelihood that it'll move back down here. And when I say down here, I'm talking about $24,900 to $29,665.27. And I would really just leave it at that. Now you could go ahead and scalp it down. We see it's actually an uptrend, so maybe it's good, but you start to see down here on one of our indicators, it's giving us an idea that it's starting to kind of round off here. We start to see some of these different patterns, right? You see here these bearish divergences setting up here, price actions higher, our wave indicators going lower. So it actually might be a good time to start looking for the downside movement. with the idea that we're trying to go into this previous zone of $24,900 to $29,665.27. And I would just leave it at that for Bitcoin. But anyways, hope you learned something today. Go ahead and check out those charts, get back and get into that trading, and of course, have a wonderful week. Peace.